It was Independence Day weekend in 1983. Selma, Oregon, was peaceful and quiet. The sun had set, but fireworks still popped in the sky. On July 4th, 27-year-old Teresa Peroni left a party with her boyfriend, Mark Sanfratello. They walked into the woods near Illinois River Road. She never returned home. Teresa was determined and full of hope. She had ended a difficult marriage and wanted a fresh start. She joined a small church group and made new friends. She was careful, loving, and open-hearted. She believed in second chances. That night, she walked into the woods, talking quietly with Mark. When morning came, Teresa did not come home. Mark told police that they argued and she wanted to walk off alone. He said he looked for her but could not find her. He offered to show them where he last saw her. Investigators followed his directions into the forest near Illinois River Road. It was thick, dark, and cold in early July. Search teams formed quickly. Family members called sheriffs. Volunteers brought flashlights and dogs. They looked for clues, a scrap of fabric, a shoe, footprints. They found nothing. Days passed. The forest stayed silent. A small town watched in fear and hope. Sheriffs searched every possible scene. They radioed for help from neighboring counties. They made snowball flyers and photos of Teresa. They visited bars and friends. They interviewed partygoers, witnesses, and family. They found contradictions in Mark's story. They noticed his calm was too calm. They felt something was wrong, but had no evidence. At first, the investigation stalled. Evidence was weak. The case felt cold by late July. Officials classified Teresa as a missing person, not a homicide. Lack of probable cause meant Mark remained free. Investigators kept paperwork, but time pressed on. Years passed. Teresa's face faded from local news. Some rumors circulated. She ran away. She got lost. She started a new life, but her family refused to believe any of it. They stayed quiet. They found small ways to keep her memory alive: a birthday card, a photo on the mantel, a candle on July 4th. They lived with a grief that had no burial, no closure. In 1997, a landowner discovered a human skull near where Teresa was last seen. Pine needles and brush covered it. Deputies responded, called cadaver dogs, and did a detailed search. They found only the skull, no clothing, no body. Forensics cataloged it. It was real remains. It was bone from someone long gone. Sheriff's office sent the skull to University of North Texas. Labs at the time struggled with degraded bone. They extracted DNA, but results were inconclusive. DNA tech was in its infancy. They stored the skull in evidence. The case stayed open, file folders in a locked cabinet. No charges were made. No one was arrested. Mark lived in California. He rarely returned to Oregon. He maintained his innocence quietly. He married again. Neighbors said he was normal, friendly, but private. He kept old photos. He avoided any public mention of Teresa's name. After 20 years, a new generation of detectives took over Teresa's case. In February 2024, Josephine County investigators reopened the file. The digital age was in full swing. They pulled evidence from cold storage. They met with UNT again. They reconnected with labs offering advanced DNA sequencing and genealogy techniques. They collected saliva from Teresa's blood relatives. Investigators interviewed people who knew Teresa and Mark in 1983. Old friends, church members, neighbors. They found gaps in Mark's timeline. They discovered faded trust and old wounds. They rechecked reports, examined party photos, reviewed notes. They solidified suspicion. In April 2024, UNT confirmed the skull was Teresa's. The lab compared mitochondrial DNA from bone to DNA from Teresa's sister. It matched. There was no doubt. She had died, and it was not natural. Detectives moved fast. In June 2025, they presented findings to the Josephine County grand jury. They explained the link between Teresa and Mark. They showed that he was with her right before she disappeared. They explained that he guided the search into the woods. They showed inconsistencies and lies. On June 27, 2025, the grand jury voted to indict Mark Sanfratello, now 72, on murder charges. He was officially accused of killing Teresa in 1983. The next day, June 28, he was arrested by Chico, California, police. He surrendered quietly. No fight, no fuss. He headed into handcuffs and an unknown future. News of the arrest spread across Oregon. It was 2025, over 42 years since July 4, 1983. Selma families saw images on TV and social media. They watched Teresa's older siblings hug each other outside the courthouse. A hush fell over the area, followed by quiet tears, whispers of relief, and a hush of validation. Their sister's memory had finally reached justice. Mark was taken to California jail and then filed for bail. Bail was set high in amount he could not meet. He awaited extradition to Oregon. He had lawyers now. He demanded his rights. Back in Selma, authorities combed the forest again. They searched for Teresa's resting place. They used ground-penetrating radar. They expanded searches near the skull discovery. They hoped to find full remains. They wanted Teresa's body to sit in a proper grave. Family members returned with detectives. They walked the woods in memory of Teresa. They placed flowers at tree stumps and kisses at small creek banks. A soft breeze passed. They talked quietly, not blame, but longing and hope. Counsel for Mark filed motions. He claimed faded memories, faulty DNA tests, misinterpreted evidence. He reminded the court his client was innocent until proven guilty. He filed for psychiatric evaluations. He demanded DNA retesting. Prosecutors responded with confidence. They cited modern labs, high match percentages, and detailed lab logs from UNT. They cited Mark's calm demeanor in 1983. They showed that he asked searchers to go deeper into the woods. They reminded the court that the indictment was based solidly on scientific fact and witness statements. In July 2025, responders held a short vigil in Selma's town square. Friends traveled from out of state and across Oregon. They held candles. They wrote letters on a banner. They read stories about Teresa, the way she smiled, the laughter she shared. One friend said she was kind, she was funny, she believed in people. Another said she was finally going to rest, and we were all going to remember her, right? When Mark was extradited to Oregon, he arrived quietly, escorted by officers. Reporters scribbled notes. Protesters and supporters stood meters apart. Some cried, some prayed, some simply watched. At the arraignment, Mark pleaded not guilty. The courtroom sat silent. Teresa's sister read a statement. "I want answers. I want to know why she died that night. I want justice for her voice." The judge set a trial date. Over the coming months, forensics became key. DNA experts testified on lab processes. They showed how modern methods overcame old limitations. Genealogists explained how Teresa's family tree led them to confirm the bone belonged to her. They explained accuracy percentages, and replicating tests. Experts discussed the nature of skull decay. They described ancient geology of the Oregon forest. They showed photos of the skull discovery and how it was preserved without contamination. They showed detailed lab notebooks. Witnesses were called church members who recalled Teresa's faith, concern for her safety, and connection to Mark. Others recalled seeing Teresa upset after the argument, and a pale Mark quickly walking away. Defense attorneys moved to suppress some evidence. They argued chain of custody was broken. They claimed memories were unreliable after 42 years. They questioned lab contamination. They asked jurors to doubt, to be prepared for missteps. Prosecutors responded with lab logs, security camera images, sealed evidence, and DNA cycles. They invited jurors to review the skull, examine bone fragments under cameras, and see expert testimony in person. They said they would not hide lab mistakes. They said open evidence is clear evidence. Meanwhile, in Selma, families prepared for trial. A memorial stone was placed next to a tall pine outside the courthouse. They arranged a small tribute on July 4, 2025. They lit lamps and put photos of Teresa and the skull with candles. They read letters to her, telling her she was loved, she was missed. They prayed for her peace. Counselors and volunteers offered support as questions swirled. Each court session reopened old sorrow. Early memories flooded back. One former church friend recalled Teresa researching new classes. Another recalled how Mark changed the tone of her life shortly before the disappearance. Perhaps the trial starts in August 2025. Prosecutors will call families to the stand. Teresa's parents will go silent before the judge. The voice of her sister will stand alone, breaking tears. Defense will cross-examine Mark's background. They will ask about his life in California. They will ask if he kept seeing dead bodies in his mind. They will test every lab assumption. But more than science and testimony, the trial is a mirror of time. It asks how we treat unsolved pain. It asks if a community can heal. It asks if justice means a sentence or a moment of truth. This is a watershed case for small-town America and cold cases across the nation. It shows that decades-old questions can still be solved. It shows that modern science refuses to forget. It shows that families never stop hoping. At the center is Teresa, 27, faded but not lost. Her life was interrupted by loss, but now her story is louder than silence. Now her name is on the lips of reporters and friends. Now her memory builds courage for others. And Mark, he stands quiet, accused. He hopes for a fair trial. He denies wrongdoing. He lives in regret, fear, or resignation. We may never know what he feels. He will speak behind lawyers. His words will be sparse, but justice is louder. Justice is the stone, the courtroom, the verdict. Justice is the DNA cycle, the skull in a box, the candle in the community square. Justice is closure for grieving families. This is how one cold case found its answer. Teresa's name survived, pain carried, hope endured. In a small town in Oregon, the long chill of sorrow ended in a courtroom. The path to justice began in a forest and ended in a trial. It is proof that no case is too cold, no memory is too buried. And so this story concludes with something to hold. Closure may come later. Graves may open again. Faces once lost may be seen. Families may breathe again. Communities may forgive themselves. Teresa Peroni still walks with the memory of a candlelight vigil, lives still whisper her name. Justice is being served, Evan, after 42 long years. Let this be a testament. Time does not bury truth. Science can unveil the past. Families carry love beyond loss. And we, as watchers and listeners, must remember every missing person matters. Every case deserves a second look. Every life needs a voice. Thank you for listening.